I'm Steve Flores, the Assembly Department Supervisor for Dynatrack Products. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing the Dana 60 4-point spindle nut and washer and how to install it. So let's take a look at the parts and let's get started. Okay, so here we have our spindle 4-point spindle nut and washer kit. Okay, so in this first piece, we're going to have a spindle nut with a pin in it. The pin should be facing out or facing towards you when you install it. Our second piece is going to be our spindle nut washer. Right, spindle nut washer has a tab here that lines up with the slot on the spindle, and we have these holes which are not symmetrical, so you're able to flip it if you need to adjust it while installing it. Okay, so our third piece will be the spindle nut that has no pin. So this one you're gonna line up so they'll sit in a stack. And then let's move on to our spindle. Let's install it. Okay, so we're gonna get started on the install process. So I have a spindle here, no hub, and the reason for that is so I'm able to show you how the install goes and you're able to see all the components going in. With the hub on there, it's kind of dark, you're not able to see it, so we'll do that later. Okay, so now we're going to get started on installing these components. Okay, so our first nut, we have a pin. Backside does not have a pin, so make sure your pin is facing out or facing you, and we're going to install this piece. So before I install it, I usually add a little grease on the backside of the spindle nut, and we're going to install it. So I'm going to grab my 4-point socket and I'm going to thread it down. Okay, so as I thread this down, remember I want to torque it, and I don't have my torque wrench on there, and this is just for showing how the procedures go. So as I wind down, I get there, I usually would have my torque wrench, I'm going to click till I hit 55 foot-pounds. Then I'm going to go counterclockwise, a quarter turn, right? So a quarter turn off, so that would be my quarter turn, and then I want to go hand tight. And the reason for all that would be to seat the bearing so it's properly seated. But once I do my quarter turn off, bearing, and I'm going to hand tight, bearing should be seated. So then I want to feel preload on my hub. So we're going to remove this. So the next step would be our second piece. It's going to be our lock washer. If you notice, there's a tab here and there's a slot here on the spindle. So our tab needs to line up with the spindle slot. And as you can see here, I'm going to turn the spindle slightly. The pin is here as well. So if we can see that, I'm going to line this up right here. So as I set this down, you can see that my pin did not line up. It's here. So one trick we can use is by flipping this washer. So remember, these holes are not symmetrical. So if I grab this washer, remove it, turn it 180, set it back down, it might line up. So that time it didn't. So as you can see, either way I flipped it, it didn't line up. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna snug that. So I grab my 4-point socket again. I'm gonna give it a little, I'm gonna give just a little more. So I'm gonna tighten it slightly. I'm not gonna loosen it because I don't want sloppy bearings, or I don't want to mess up my preload. I'm gonna tighten. So just a slight tightening right there. Maybe that much should do it, right? So now I'm going to put my lock washer on. I'm gonna line up this slot and hopefully the pin will line up. So I'm gonna drop that on. And as you can see, my pin is not lined up. It's kind of towards the center. So I'm gonna remove this, and remember, this is not symmetrical. So if I flip it, it might change direction of the holes. So let me try this way. As you can see, I lined up. So now that my nut has been captured, the pin has been captured, the washer, I'm gonna jump to my third component, which is my second spindle nut. So a little bit of grease on the back side. Once again, I'm gonna install this here. line up my socket. Okay, so the second nut, I'm gonna torque to 75 foot-pounds. So once I got it on there, I'm gonna torque it to 75 foot-pounds, click, and I'm done. So I'm gonna remove this socket. Everything should be tight. Then I wanna check the preload on my hub, make sure everything's nice and snug. I got good preload and it's not sloppy. Then I can move on to the next one. So we're gonna install this. Remember, pin has to face out, okay? So remember, our first nut, we're going to torque it down to 55 foot-pounds. Then we're going to do our quarter turn off. So I'm going to set this to 55 foot-pounds. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to torque. Okay, and then I'm going to do a quarter turn off. So once I do that, I'm taking my torque wrench off and I'm going to hand tight. As tight as I can get it by hand, right? So then I'm going to feel it, okay? I got no slack, so I'm good. So now I'm going to do my second one. Second component is going to be the lock washer. So I want to line that tab up first and hopefully my pin will line up. I'm going to go down here. So that's kind of why we did it on the bench, so you would be able to see it. Okay, didn't go that way, didn't go the one way, so I'm going to flip it and let's try this way. And it just happened to go, so that's good. Now we're gonna grab the second nut in 75 foot-pounds. So remember, this is not directional. There's no forward or backwards to the second one because there's not a pin on there. So a little bit of grease here, second nut, and we'll do our final torque. Okay. Let me set my torque wrench. So final torque should be 75 foot-pounds. Okay. After doing all that, we're just going to check our preload. Seems to feel good. No play in the hub. And that's it. Okay, so this concludes the Dana 60 4-point installation video. Email any questions to sales@dynatrack.com. Visit us on the web at dynatrack.com. And thank you so much for your time. Keep your eye out for new videos. Thank you.